I've got a bunch of notes here. Got to make sure organized. Okay, it's 11. Let's get started. So my name is Ben Wright. I am the banjo player for the Hen House Prowlers, a bluegrass band based in Chicago that tours all over the world. And we have had incredible opportunities to travel to more than 25 countries. And what we found out through those opportunities is that music is this amazing tool to bring people together. And we're extending that knowledge through live streaming during this interesting time we're living in, and finding some of our favorite musicians to kind of pick their brains and get to know them a little bit better, and hopefully expand both adults and children's minds a little bit during these times. Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central is more for music lovers, for maybe for adults, and then Thursdays is for kids. And I'm sure the guys will drop the link to the kids episode a couple times during this, so make sure you sign up for that. If you have any children at home, if you want to help us pay for everything we're doing here, we're paying these musicians, we're doing some graphic design and paying for Zoom and all that stuff, please consider donating to Bluegrass Ambassadors. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And yeah, we can use some help right now, but we're going to keep doing this regardless. At the end of these, if you're on Zoom, we're going to, if you're on Zoom, there's a survey afterwards that helps us improve this, so please fill it out if you have the time. If you're on Zoom and you have questions, drop them in the Q&A section here on Zoom, and we'll try to get to them. If you're on Facebook, the rest of the Prowlers are keeping an eye on things, and we'll try to transfer them here, and I'll try to look at them too. So I want to introduce this incredible musician sitting across the internet from me. I met him a couple months ago in Nashville at a get-together called Leadership Bluegrass, where they pick people who are pushing the genre and the music business forward. And Jake was there, and there was a whole group of incredible people there. It was really amazing experience, and Jake really kind of blew me away with his presence there. So he was one of the first people I thought about when we started to do this, and I was lucky enough to nab him. So folks, please make welcome Mr. Jake Blount, sitting across from me here. Good to see you, Jake.
Good to see you too.
Right on. Why don't we get started and just have you play a tune for us at your leisure?
I can do that.
Awesome. A 5-string fiddle.
Yes, indeed.
Wow,
I'm one
cool.
of those. It's a species.
Tell me a little bit about that fiddle. It's beautiful.
A guy named Nathaniel Rowan made it. He made one of Daryl Anger's fiddles, so a lot of people know him from that. But he makes a lot of really cool instruments. He lives in Putney, Vermont, and kind of figured out a way to modify the outside of the instrument without changing the inside resonating space at all. So technically, I think this is a Garneri copy. But
Wow.
it looks like none other.
Was Garneri a famous luthier?
Yeah, one of the Cremonese ones, like Stradivari, and
Wow.
yeah,
Is the side of that gray?
it's silver. His requested input when you ask him to make you a fiddle is he lets you pick 2 colors, and mine were black and silver, and it wound up having a little bit more than just that on it. But yeah, it's a pretty funny tale. He definitely he texted me kind of out of the blue while he was making it and was like, "I'm sneezing silver everywhere," and I was like, "It's fine. You can, you can stop wherever you're at."
That's cool.
Yeah. For any fiddlers or fiddle nerds here, I am in cross tuning AAEAE. I'm going to play Manco Sneed's Old Timey Gray Eagle.
Nice. What can you tell me about that tune?
Well, it's called Old Timey Gray Eagle, and I learned it from a recording of a Cherokee fiddler by the name of Manco Sneed, who is from Cherokee, North Carolina, and part of a large fiddling and banjo playing family. He was one of four brothers who all played: Manco, Osco, Pico, and Campbell. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know some of his descendants and playing some of his music at their family reunions and stuff. It's pretty great.
That's cool. You take the history of the music you play pretty seriously.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, can you tell me, like, how did you get started personally before you get? I want to talk more about that, but how did you get started playing fiddle and banjo?
I guess it was kind of a long downward spiral. I don't know. It's a twisting, turning trajectory, but I definitely got more engaged in modern folk type stuff at the end of high school. I'm not sure exactly how that wound up happening. I know my friend Rob sent me the song Barton Hollow by the Civil Wars, and it just like blew my mind because I was a rock and funk musician, and I was like, you can sing in harmony? What? And it was pretty great. So I got pretty engaged in that and wound up like buying an acoustic guitar and learning the whole album. And then when that summer rolled around, it was the summer that Black Lives Matter kind of kicked into gear. And the day that the grand jury handed down their decision that George Zimmerman would not be tried for killing Trayvon Martin, I remember just like going upstairs in my grandparents' house and just like digging through all these books of spirituals and stuff to kind of just make sense of how I was feeling and what the world looked like at that moment. And not really finding what I was going for there, so I started digging further into what those same people would have been doing back in slavery days and during, early Jim Crow, all that, and found out that the banjo and the fiddle were kind of the centerpieces of their musical life. And not only that, but the banjo had, taken shape amongst the enslaved folks in the Caribbean and in the United States. And the first spot that it kind of made its home here on the continental U.S. was amongst the slaves in the Chesapeake Bay region, who are my ancestors. So I kind of found this surprisingly direct link to it. And just sort of jumped in. I went to college and got my first couple banjo lessons from a professor there named Lydia Hammersley, who wound up being my advisor, and is doing all this cool research on Dolly Parton and stuff. Just popped up on some BBC special on my timeline the other day, completely out of the blue. So I had some good support there and just kind of got deeper and deeper, and here we are.
Yeah. You're about to release an album on Free Dirt Records, right? Isn't that Free Dirt
Yes.
Records? And they're not a small deal. They're a really cool label.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I was super excited when they decided they wanted to work with me on this. I've been following artists on their label ever since Anna and Elizabeth first got on it, really. So to find myself on the same roster as Tatiana Hargraves and Alison DeGroot and Vivian Leva and Western Centuries and Che Appalache, there's so many cool people who are on that label that I've wanted to hang out with and learn from and talk to. I'm really excited to be part of that group.
That's cool. Can you play us? You just said a whole bunch of stuff I want to dive deeper into, but can you play us a track off of that album or a tune off of that album?
Yeah, I can totally do that. Technically, I just did. Old Timey Gray Eagle is one of them, but I
Nice.
can do another too.
Yeah, let's hear a banjo tune, and you gotta tell me about that banjo, which is
I
different.
will.
It's different from another one I've seen you play.
Yes, I have a couple, and I have more than a couple. I have the classic banjo acquisition syndrome.
Yes, indeed.
This banjo is not in the tuning I wanted it to be, so I'll tell you about it while I fix that. It is a 6-string banjo, but not a guitar banjo.
Wow.
It was. Is it ever? No, the banjo is never in the tuning I want it to be
Just
in.
just ignore that. That's Dan Andrew, our smart or not so smart old previous fiddle player.
You know, that was an accurate comment though. The banjo players know the struggle.
It's true.
But yeah, this was built for me by Cedars Instruments, Seeders. My friend Will is a really great banjo maker, also in Vermont. I'm just doing the Vermont hit parade of instruments today. But yeah, I've had it for about a year or so, and really love it. It's definitely become my main thing. I don't think I'm ever going to need another banjo. I say now.
Yeah, right. So yeah, 6 strings, but it's not a guitar banjo, which is a dirty term in the world I live in.
And mine.
Yeah, good. So if it's 6 strings, how is it tuned? Take your time here. I don't mean to.
Yeah, usually it depends a little bit on what I'm doing with it. But for the most part, I'll take the low string. It has an extra low string on it.
Okay.
So I'll use that as an octave of the 3rd string. So
Okay.
it's particularly useful in like G and A tunings.
I know that Sonny Osborne had a 6-string banjo, but I believe that extra low string was usually tuned to a C.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was, the Osborne brothers were in their time ultra progressive, and I remember reading an article about how people thought it was blasphemy that he put an extra string on his banjo.
You know, there's still some people who think that way, but they don't usually say that after they've heard it. So
Yeah, right on.
Well, I will play another one of the tunes from the album. It's called Beyond This Wall, and it was written by a dear friend and mentor of mine, Judy Hyman, who plays in a band called the Horseflies from Ithaca, New York, which is close to home for you, I know.
That's right.
And she and her husband, Jeff, actually produced the album. So
cool.
It was super exciting to be able to throw one of their things on there, and Tatiana Hargraves and I do it as a banjo fiddle duet.
that was beautiful. And who wrote that?
Judy Hyman of the Horseflies.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah. So two things. We got a couple of questions, or at least a comment, and a question. Can you pull your camera down just a little bit? People want to see your right hand and
Yes.
your technique, and so do I, because when we were sound checking yesterday, you were doing some really cool stuff with your right hand that I hadn't quite seen personally before. Dan wants to know what the symbol near on the bottom of the neck is there.
Yeah, so I have a few different ones happening here. Let me try and hold my banjo a little closer. So that's the same one repeated up at the top. And then different, the inlay is all Adinkra symbols used by the Akan and Asante peoples of Ghana and the Ivory Coast. So each one has a little bit of a different meaning. The inlays on the fret are epa, which is handcuffs, and kind of signify slavery in that. I don't know what you would call it, language of symbols, I guess. And this one is the akoben, the war horn, which is vigilance, wariness, etc. And these ones are seppo, the executioner's knife, which symbolizes justice. So,
Wow.
just
Where did you find those?
there's a lot of research that's been done about them from all sorts of different scholars. A lot of it's in French, unfortunately, so I had a hard time deciphering much of that. But if you just look up online Adinkra symbols, go through JSTOR, etc., there's a lot of good literature and some good collections of the different symbols and their significance and pronunciations, things like that.
Very, very cool. And so you had that custom made with those.
Yes.
Very cool. So I want to take a step back, and you were talking about Ithaca, and you kind of specialize in focusing on regional fiddle tunes. Is that a correct way to say that?
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes it's not as much tunes as the way you play the tunes, but definitely the late 70s, early 70s until now, Ithaca has kind of developed its own vernacular music style that for a lot of old-time musicians is instantly recognizable. And when I was first learning to play, I was going to college 2 hours from Ithaca, which is next door in upstate New York, as you know.
Sure.
So when I would go play music or go take lessons, etc., I would go to Ithaca and go to like Falling Waters Music Camp, etc., and hang out with Judy Hyman and Rosie Newton and folks like that. And it took a couple years before they like got to know who I was, but I spent all that time copying them. So it definitely filtered in, and when I learned to play, I definitely had that accent all the time. And I've kind of learned I have to moderate it and bring it out and let it sit, depending on the piece. But it's definitely an important part of my musical background, and something I really love.
So, and I'm from the area, and I didn't discover playing music until I left. So when I found out you were from Ithaca and that you actually have put a lot of time into understanding what that sound is, it certainly piqued my interest because I never got a chance to explore any of it. Can you give me an example of what an Ithaca sound is?
Yeah, I can try. Easiest to do on the fiddle.
Okay.
The banjo sound definitely also has its own thing, but it kind of is so improvisatory that it doesn't hang together that well on its own unless you're very, very good at it. I'm trying to think of something I can A-B, sort of. We can just play something that's Ithaca-ish. I'll play
That's
another
okay.
Judy Hyman tune, since she's kind of the epitome of this, called Flowers and Olives.
very cool. What now? Was the shuffling of that part of what made it Ithaca-ish?
Definitely. So there's this thing that Judy has termed the flutter bow. It's the only name that I've heard for it. That originates with the Highwoods string band. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they were kind of like the hot shot young folks in like the late 60s and early 70s, like went around winning all the contests and stuff. And one of the fiddlers, Bob Potts, who's like not much of a fiddler anymore, he does kinetic sculpture, and it's incredible. You should look up Bob Potts sculpture if you're ever feeling stressed. It's just beautiful.
Cool.
And he had this kind of back and forth thing happening with his bow, just a lot of saw stroking. And when folks like Judy and John Specker from the Correct Tone String Band showed up in Ithaca a little bit later on, largely due to parties the Highwood String Band was throwing, they started to kind of take that approach and swing it a little bit more. So you get this sort of really like groovy backbeat thing happening. Yeah. And that's not to say that goes uninterrupted the whole time. There's a lot of kind of upslurring and sweeping in the way that old time fiddle does. So the syncopation from like the round peak style that was so popular at the time is still in there. But there's a lot more back and forth and a lot more of a backbeat. There's a real push on the 2 and the 4 a lot of the time. The Horseflies in particular have a banjo ukulele player that kind of is just, it's Jeff. He's just a human metronome. And it feels a lot like new wave music. It's kind of like if the Police played a square dance. It's like what would have come out of it, because that was the time period.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome. I've always felt really drawn to it. So even after departing that region, it's definitely stayed my favorite way to just jam out on tunes, is to just go to the Ithaca place.
That warms my heart to hear that, even though it's only something I'm starting to grasp. I do think people should check out the Horseflies, because even with me not being part of the scene, I knew who they were and heard them. And even years later, I saw them once at a festival that the Prowlers were playing. They did a late night set. I don't remember where this is, but they did where this was. I know where it was. It was at Rocky Grass. And they did a late night set that was techno old time music.
Yeah.
And it just blew my brain open. As much of a adherence to tradition that I think that Ithaca region has, it also really pushes things forward. And to hear electronic music mixed with banjo and fiddle really was a beautiful thing, and I won't ever forget that. And I appreciate your giving me a taste of what actually the Ithaca sound is. So you must you heard about those the history from the Horseflies, like about the you were talking about the 60s and the 70s. You're not that old, so
yes.
who passed that knowledge on to you?
Well, I did 2 sort of thesis projects when I graduated, one of which resulted in my first EP with Tatiana Hargraves, Reparations. That was all about Black and indigenous music, etc. And the other of which was about the Ithaca sound. So I interviewed members of the Highwood String Band. I interviewed Bob Potts. I interviewed Walt Koken, the late, great Mac Benford. I interviewed Judy. Yes, I talk to Judy and Jeff all the time anyway, so a lot of things have filtered in that way. And I talked to a lot of other folks who maybe aren't like gigging all the time. They're not professional musicians, but have been in that scene for a really long while or been adjacent to it. There were a lot of folks who kind of watched that whole sound kind of rise in the 80s and knew exactly what I was going for and had a lot of wisdom to impart. My friend Brian Slattery grew up in Ithaca and learned fiddling initially from Judy, so he had a lot to tell me. It was an interesting project for sure, but I was able to kind of piece together how a regional style developed in a way that I've never gotten to do before, because usually the people who started the regional style aren't still alive, but in this case they are. So I got to go talk to people who were involved and members of the bands that started the whole thing, and that was really cool.
Yeah. I'm lucky enough to occasionally, when we're allowed to play music in public, play three finger style banjo with some really amazing old time players here in the city. And, I don't have any more perspective musically outside of that, but I do know that they're playing regional tunes. They're playing songs from central Illinois, from southern Wisconsin that they learned from other fiddle players. And plus, one of the guys is Steve Rosen, who wrote Nail That
Yes.
Catfish to a Tree. And I recognize how lucky I am to kind of hang and pick with these guys. But it's really cool to hear you talk about your passion for that, because it's probably not something I'll ever be able to dive in completely. And I just think it's from musician to musician, it's a powerful thing to feel that passion, and I don't know, it's just really cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. Can you tell me about Clifftop?
What specifically about Clifftop? Like,
Well,
what is Clifftop? Or
Yeah,
like,
sure. Well, I'm trying to get to the fact that you won Clifftop eventually, but I recognize a lot of the people here are tuning in, myself included, probably are more familiar with bluegrass music. And old time is a different world, though. If you listen to it in passing and you don't have experience with it, you probably think they have a lot more in common musically. And I know Clifftop is kind of the mecca for old time music, right?
Yes and no. I
Okay.
think for on like a national and global level, absolutely, Clifftop is the place where we all migrate to and gather, and the competitions there sort of show who the tastemakers are in that particular moment. And it's a really good way to kind of get yourself established in the old time industry, such as it exists, and to get booked at camps and stuff. But it's just sort of this large open space in the mountains of West Virginia, and people just gather and set up tents and play music together. And some people enter the competitions, and some people just go to have fun. And it's a really great time. Kind of everyone goes. I think I always hesitate to frame it as like the gathering point for old time, because I think for people who are actually from Appalachia and from the regions where old time music come from, it's probably not the biggest one. That would be Galax,
Okay.
which bluegrassers probably are more familiar with. It's a similar concept, but also has bluegrass and is in Virginia. Clifftop is great, and by broad festival standards is extremely affordable, but I've known a lot of people from West Virginia and other parts of Appalachia who are just like, I can't afford to go to that. Or, maybe feel like there's so many hippies from other places in the fairgrounds that they need to like hang out outside the gate to do their own thing the way that they learned. And that, I think, is kind of sad. And I hope that we find a way to be more inclusive of the people who gave us this music. But it's a really beautiful place where a lot of beautiful things happen, and there's just an incredible feeling of community, folks making dinner for one another and hosting big parties and jams of 25, 50 people, and also jams of 4 people that won't let you come close. All the vibes in one place. It's pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, that does sound similar to a bluegrass festival for sure. So it was kind of a big deal when you won the competition there, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I always try to be like realistic about how much that means to everybody. Someone wins every year. But the first time, I want to say it was 2016, maybe. And my band, the Moose Whisperers, won the traditional band contest. And then this past year, I won the banjo contest. And as far as anybody knows, I'm the first black person ever to make the finals there, let alone win anything. So that was pretty exciting. And this year had the super cool thing happened where a queer person came in first in every single category.
Whoa.
So the soloists, and then also at least one member of each of the bands. So we called it the gay sweep, and had a lot of parties about the gay sweep, and still talk about it all the time. Definitely have
cool.
multiple friends. We just like text each other broom emojis. Like, bring it back.
So what, like, yeah, I mean, that that whole experience must have been pretty powerful, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I think the old time community has never felt unwelcoming or scary to me in the way that I think a lot of folks from my hometown in DC and other places where I spend a lot of time would think it was. I definitely, when I started going to all the festivals and camps and everything, I had a lot of friends, especially like other black friends, be like, "Are you safe? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Just because, we might not have as great associations with the rural South. My whole family is from Southern Virginia, rural Southern Virginia, and I understand it's a complicated picture, but it's a scary picture for a lot of black people who maybe have spent most of our lives in cities or in more northerly places. So, definitely was it felt like homecoming in a number of ways to kind of show up, especially for the banjo contest. The traditional band one was exciting, but for the banjo contest, I kind of felt like, cool, I just got to take this back for us, of like black people have been written out of this story for so long. And even though I regard Galax as being, an equal partner to Clifftop in terms of prestige and the importance of the contests, I still think on a worldwide level, there's an attention paid to Clifftop that made it feel really important for me to like be there and be visible, to wear like my Our Native Daughters Black Myself t-shirt on stage while I was doing that. It felt really important, and it felt like I was able to do an important thing and to show up and say, we're back.
Yeah.
It's ours again, and that was really exciting.
That's cool. We talked yesterday a little bit, and we both kind of came to the conclusion that if I was going to prepare for this at all, it'd be to reread Rihanna Giddens' IBMA speech from 2016, I think. And I can't recommend anybody. Everybody should read that because it re-blew my mind just reading it this morning again. And the connections between black people and the music that I've poured my entire life into is profound and lost, and at the same time, and it's really fascinating stuff. I appreciate your personal take on that because it's something that I think people need to be reminded of over and over until it's no longer forgotten. Can you play the song you won? Is that
Yeah.
too much to ask? Because I didn't ask you to do this beforehand, but I'd love to hear the song that you
No,
won the
totally.
contest with.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm gonna have to retune real quick.
That's okay.
I played three, and all of them were from black banjo players. And the two I played in the final, I think I played Leather Britches from Nathan
cool.
Frazier for the prelims, and then in the finals I played Texas Traveler, also from Nathan Frazier, and Dink Roberts' Roustabout, which is on the album. So
Nice.
this is a killing two birds with one stone.
So here's a good way to fold a question in here, actually. Jake, another Jake, was asking, let's see here. He wants to know about your research and how you go into looking up the history on these tunes. Maybe you could talk about one of these tunes and how you learned about it.
Ooh, yes, I can. My banjo is very not in tune, but I'm gonna let it chill for a second.
That's okay.
It suddenly became spring yesterday,
Right.
and my instruments are having a moment. But yeah, I guess it depends a little bit on the source. Some of them, like Dink Roberts, the one who this version of Roustabout comes from, is super well documented because Cecilia Conway studied him extensively for her book African Banjo Echoes in Appalachia, which is a book that I would say has like some serious problems as far as the way that it frames and talks about people, but also is probably the best repository of information about this that we have. And I think we have to embrace both sides of that. And that made it pretty easy to learn more about who he is and who he was and where he lived. the circumstances of his family. They lived in Haw River, North Carolina. I'm not sure if that's still a place, but he had this really strange way of playing the banjo that I've always just found really intriguing. He did both up picking and down picking stuff, but I've mostly worked with his down picking stuff.
Can you demonstrate that? Maybe pull that screen down a little bit, your camera down just a little bit, and talk about up picking and down picking.
Yeah, let me tune this before I try to make sounds with it.
Take your time. Take your time. While you're tuning, I want to give a shout out to. We actually have a few people in the Zoom from Africa, Wamagunda in Kenya, specifically. I think it's really cool that we have people tuning in from all over the world here.
I guess, I don't know if I have any Dink Roberts up picking things specifically to share right now, but the general idea of old time up picking is just, it's sort of in between what you do and what I do normally. So that kind of thing. So you're just kind of picking up and down 2 or 3 fingers. People do different things depending on their background and where they're from. And claw hammer is kind of picking down with your index fingernail, catching your thumb and pulling that off of the drone string or another string if you're drop thumbing. So that's the version of Dink's playing that I have tried to familiarize myself with.
Okay. That banjo sounds beautiful, man.
Thank you. Yeah. I definitely love it.
Tie a hook and line. When you go courting, go with the will in mind. Who's been here since I've been gone? Pretty little girl with a red dress on.
That is so cool. I immediately recognize that because I've seen the video of you competing. It's not hard to find on YouTube. Just Jake Blount and look up the Clifftop competition, and it's cool. It's you sitting up there on stage, kind of all alone playing that. And like how representative of that is that of you as a performer? How often do you play alone versus in a duo or a band?
Well, that's kind of been an ever-shifting balance. I am in a duo called Tui that we've been touring quite a bit since we put an album out last December.
That's TUI, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And now it is no longer last December. It's the December before last. That's when we recorded it. But it came out that spring. So we've been touring pretty extensively, trying to get that out into the world. These days I'm doing a lot of solo stuff, mainly just because I haven't been living close to any of my collaborators. My duo partner in Tui lives in New York, and usually I perform the material from my CD and from Reparations with Tatiana Hargraves, who lives in North Carolina. So I've been kind of located off on my own. So I've spent a lot of time working on the solo set lately, but it depends who's around. I've been trying to collaborate with more different people, and it makes me learn new stuff, and it's fun.
It keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna tour the CD with the whole backing band in May, but no longer.
Yeah, that was gonna be international, right?
That one was not. That
Okay.
one was just going to be kind of in the Mid-Atlantic region, and hopefully it will be in the Mid-Atlantic region one day, but it is not this day.
Yeah. I want to get to some questions here, but I particularly wanted to at least touch on briefly in these times, and I saw you make a Facebook post a couple weeks ago. You actually came down with COVID-19, right?
Yeah, I'm in this like weird category of people that there's all sorts of different ways you can figure that out. And ordinarily the gold standard, of course, is, taking the test and seeing what that says. In this case, the test is wrong 30% of the time, 30% false negative rate. So my doctor sent me in to get a test after she diagnosed me. I came back negative. I called her back like 2 weeks later, and she was like, "You're still sick with all of the COVID symptoms. You definitely have it."
Wow.
So I'm kind of in this strange situation where my doctors told me yes, and the test has told me no, but the test also comes with a paragraph saying that it's wrong all the time, and it doesn't countermand a diagnosis unless you get more tests done, but no one can get more tests done. It's a little bit of a confusing situation, but for the time being, I've been told to act as if I have it, and I have definitely felt as if I have it. But I seem to be on the upswing. I'm now in week 5, so it's been a really long, drawn-out thing. But I'm gratified that I'm starting to feel better just as the sun comes out. Got to go for 2 long walks yesterday with a mask, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I thought your post was, I don't know. I don't want this to. I just thought it was kind of brave for you to put it out there like that, because I hadn't seen anybody else do it before, and the outpouring of support was amazing. I don't know. I think almost 500 comments of people saying how much they loved you and stuff. And
yeah, that was really nice. I think I posted that out of this feeling that the first time I did it, I just posted it being like, "Hey, the world is crazy. Bureaucracy is really difficult. I can't figure out what's happening with my health, and I've been sick forever." And then after I posted that, several people wrote me and were like, "This is happening to me too, and I feel like I can't talk about it right now." And I posted the second one that was just kind of an update and noting that over the past few weeks, what's been really bad for me hasn't even so much been the physical effects of the virus, because I've been pretty lucky in the way that that's manifested, but just the psychological effects of being sick for so long and having it be so up and down. And because the communications around this, the information we're getting is so dire, every time you take a downturn, even though it's normal for it to be a roller coaster, you're like, "Oh, is this it?" The stress and the strain have been pretty unbelievable, and I'm feeling better than I have been, but I just felt the need to kind of be open about what it looks like, since I feel like we're only hearing about cases of people who are asymptomatic and people who are like on ventilators. There's a whole world of in between, and the recovery picture is so complicated for me and for friends who I know who've had it, who have reached out to me after I made those posts. And it's just something that people need to be aware of. More and more of us are going to be facing it inevitably, and I think it's just important to talk about it and be open.
Yeah, to your post, I think went a long way towards normalizing it for people, and I really appreciated that. So good work.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you? Well, I had a really great question here. I want to ask you from somebody, Rick Meyer. Rick Meyer asked said that some of the stuff you were playing, I bet he's talking about the Ithaca tune, the Olives and Flowers. Is that what it was called?
Flowers and Olives.
Flowers and Olives.
Yeah.
He said it sounded to him a little bit like Cajun music. He asked, is there an overlap with bluegrass, old time, and Cajun music?
There are definitely a lot of people who kind of skate between those three genres as they please. Mm-hmm. And I know that in Ithaca specifically, there are fiddlers who were part of the development of that style who also played Cajun. I think Tara Nevins is one of them. I'm pretty sure Jeb Perrier also does some Cajun-y stuff. So there's a couple folks who were there the whole time who did that. That has definitely been brought up as a potential source for that bowing style. I was not able to ascertain that for sure. I did investigate that line of inquiry, but it definitely is a similarity. I would agree with that.
That's great, good description there. We have some interesting questions coming in. Wamagunda from Kenya, not surprisingly, doesn't understand what Clifftop or even these festivals are. Can you want to give an overview of what the festival scene is like here in the States?
Yeah. So I personally think that the more accurate term for them is the old term, which was conventions, because they really are more that most of the time. Usually it's just a lot of people who play the same styles of music gathering together in open fields or in the woods or whatever, setting up campsites and then making music together. And sometimes there are booked performers playing on a stage. Oftentimes there are not. So I would say just the priority shifts to participatory playing. People get together so that they can play music with each other for the most part. And the rest that happens kind of goes along with that as a side bonus. But,
yeah, I'd agree with that. Some of the smaller regional festivals, it becomes clear that the bands playing on the stage are like the least important thing.
Yeah.
And it's all about camping and finding other people to play with, or finding the same people you always play with to play with in a and it's a beautiful thing. And I've had all night jams with some of my favorite musicians, including my bandmates, and I've also had all night jams with people I've never met before, and they've been just as valuable and incredible. And it's a really cool thing that Americans have somehow come up with over the years with acoustic music and camping. And if anybody ever gets a chance to go to one while they're visiting America, I think it's truly a wonderful way to understand at least our culture a little bit. So somebody's asking, who's in the photographs behind you there?
This is Gran and Pop Pop. That's my grandparents. So there was a couple photos of them and my cousins and me hanging out around the apartment. That they live in Smithfield, Virginia, on the family farm. Yeah,
that's cool.
Near and dear to my heart.
I'm glad we got to see them. And then John asked, what inspired you to study ethnomusicology as an academic pursuit?
I kind of went with the intention of becoming a psychology major, and once I started getting into old time to the extent that I did, I kind of realized I was either gonna drop out of college and play old time, or make college about old time music. It was just sort of how am I gonna get through this when I have a thing I'm way more excited about? So fortunately I got to work with a really cool professor and come up with an actually really informative and exciting course of study to make that work. My college, Hamilton College, is really great about letting people design their own academic trajectories and still maintaining a standard and making you actually learn stuff along the way.
That's cool. So Wilfred Lubet asked if you know what your African roots are.
My dad has done a DNA test, but I always am skeptical of DNA tests, being like entry card for something. Whatever African roots we have that may be in our genetic ancestry, they're so distant in our cultural ancestry. It's a hard thing to think about. At the end of the day, we all just kind of got brought here and put together, and it's probably 15, 20 different things. There's a lot of folks got brought to this country that didn't speak the same languages, were from totally different places, had little or nothing in common with one another. At the end of the day, we'll probably never know. I have always had the dream of going to Africa, even just to see it, but also to bring this music back and to see how it plays out over there and whether there's still any feeling of connection to it, because so much of its ancestry comes from that continent. And yeah, I don't know. That's a very complicated question. I don't know what my specific African roots are. I have African American roots. That's all that's left. But they're pretty vibrant and fantastic. I wouldn't be any other way.
That's a cool answer. I appreciate that. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. Let me give my little outro, and then I want you to play one more song. Don't forget that tomorrow we're going to spend another hour with Jake, more directed at kids, and the link will be dropped all over Facebook and stuff. So once again, this is the Bluegrass Ambassadors Academy. We're reaching out all over the world to bring some of our favorite musicians in to share their talent and their life stories with people. So if you want to help us continue doing this, you can donate at paypal.me/Bluegrass Ambassadors. There's also links at bluegrassambassadors.org, and you can find out more about all the different work we've done, both in schools here in the States, but all over the world too. And we're going to keep doing it. And I wanted to throw out one kind of last-ditch call here. We're actually looking for a musician to do this with from Wuhan. I think specifically it'd be really cool to hear some Chinese music, but also speak to people, somebody in Wuhan who's from the area we're talking so much about, but don't actually have connections with people that are there specifically. So if anybody knows of a way to contact somebody in Wuhan that speaks English, I might try to find a translator if that's not possible, but ideally English would be better because we're Americans and we only speak one language. So tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern. Jake, let's remind everybody of your website. I know we've been dropping the link to to how to pre-order your new album, and we'll be continue doing that. But what's the best way for people to find you even more?
Well, I have, social media presence on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. You can go to my website, jakeblunt.com. There's a mailing list sign up at the bottom, and also the pre-order information and a little bit more about the album, Spider Tales, which is real. I got it.
Yay, wow, cool.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. Look it up. Subscribe to the mailing list, and you'll know what's up. I'm doing plenty of streaming performances and very little else. So you're all about it.
Who did the cover art on that? I think it's gorgeous.
My best friend from high school did this. Their name is Abby Peckman, and they live out in Los Angeles. And they also did the album art for Reparations. So we have a long-standing partnership.
That's really cool. I've been listening to Reparations this for the past couple of days, and it's really great. So even if you can only pre-order Spider Tales, go and listen to Reparations. You can find it really easily. It's fantastic. So what are you gonna finish with here?
Well, I thought I'd play something also from the album that might be familiar to bluegrassers as well. It's called Boll Weevil.
Cool. And can you give us just a little bit of history behind the song or how you found it?
Yeah, so my version comes loosely from a fiddle player named Tommy Jarrell, who's often called the godfather of old time fiddle. But he apparently learned it backstage at a festival from a black woman. Don't know, I've heard that story, but I have not heard any specifics. But it kind of was a really common song. It seems like almost every blues man and old time musician who was alive at the time played it. The boll weevil, being a devastating agricultural pest that everyone in the South kind of hated on for a while. So this is the specific form that Tommy Jarrell's version took, but it's quite common.
Cool.
For any fiddlers, it's D-D-D-A-D tuning.
Cool. Wow, I can hear that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Told the farmer, better treat me right. I'll eat up all your cotton, sleep in your grain race tonight. Told the farmer, don't need no phone machine. I'll eat up all your cotton, can't buy no gasoline. Yonder comes a spider, crawling up and down the wall. He must have been gone to get his hashes home. I don't see no water, but I'm about to drown. Oh, I don't see no fire, but I'm burning down. Told the farmer, better treat me right. I'll eat up all your cotton, sleep in your grain race tonight.
Wow, man, so good. Thank you for sharing, all of you, with us today. It was really special.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, for the kids episode. I can't wait. You're amazing. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, make sure you check out his stuff, jakeblount.com.
Yes.
All right, folks. See y'all tomorrow. Thanks, Jake.
Bye. Thanks, Ben.